September 1988 brought a perfect morning on the Delgon Beach in Australia. Cooper Max, a passionate surfer, and his wife, Sophie Max, decided to seize the opportunity to ride the waves on this idyllic day. The allure of the sea was irresistible, and they couldn't resist the ocean's call. Delgon Beach had a reputation for its surfable waves, particularly during September when the weather was ideal for surfing. The sun hung low on the horizon that day, casting a golden hue over the azure waters, promising an unforgettable adventure for Cooper and Sophie. Cooper and Sophie were eagerly awaiting the opportunity to smash the waves. The rhythmic sound of the sea and the aroma of saltwater permeated the air at the beach. The light breeze wafted their laughing away as they snatched up their surfboards and waded into the shallows. As a seasoned surfer, Sophie had always been inspired by her husband's love of the sea. She was prepared to share the excitement of the surf with him today. They paddled out past the break with their boards floating on the waves. They savored the thrill of the surf as Cooper and Sophie caught their first waves of the day. The waves were flawless, their pace matching that of their hearts. For a brief moment, they felt like they were in a tropical paradise as the sun warmed their faces. However, paradise may be short-lived, and on that picture-perfect morning, horror surfaced. An enormous great white shark, a beast of primal might, suddenly and violently broke the surface. Cooper was the surfer closest to the beast, as its enormous maw, lined with razor-sharp fangs, lunged for him. Sophie's world shrank into a nightmare scene of horror as she looked in terror. She often had nightmares of when her husband Cooper disappeared into the monster predator's gaping jaws. As though time had slowed, the seconds seemed to drag on for an agonizingly long time. She was so terrified after seeing the vicious attack that she could not speak due to the overwhelming savagery of nature. Once vibrant and alive, Cooper's body dangled lifelessly in the great white shark's mouth. The unrelenting attack of the thing had left her beloved husband with horrible wounds, and seeing his mutilated body had left an irreparable mark on her mind. Cooper's body, partially devoured, dead and ripped, served as a chilling reminder of the harsh and merciless depths of the ocean, where the lines between life and death blurred into a horrible reality. It was instinct that made Sophie realize she needed to take action. She paddled fiercely toward the shark, her only weapon a surfboard, with bravery born of desperation. She attempted to release her husband at all costs while deterring the predator. Blood from the gruesome attack swirled in the water around her. As Sophie drew up to the persistent beast, her heart thumped in her chest. She slapped her surfboard against the shark's back with all the force she could muster, attempting to catch its attention. The sudden resistance startled the great white shark, who momentarily retreated. It turned its lifeless, icy gaze on Sophie, who paddled as quickly as her shaky muscles would allow. She was aware that time was of the essence. Momentarily, the condition of her husband was getting worse. Cooper was taking his last breath. However, the shark was not to be taken lightly. It gave an intense flick of its tail and disappeared beneath the waves, leaving Sophie all by herself in the vastness of the open sea. Her husband's lifeless remains floating nearby was a gruesome reminder of the merciless depths. Sophie realized she had to act immediately despite her tears and sad heart. She started the excruciating journey back to the shore while dragging her husband's body behind her. The coastline appeared to be a faraway speck on the horizon, and the distance was infinite. With every stroke of her arms, Sophie battled against the relentless pull of the sea, each motion an excruciating test of her endurance. The weight of her husband's lifeless body made each stroke feel like a monumental effort, yet her unwavering determination was her sole ally in the desperate struggle to bring him back to the shore. The sun was beating down brutally as Sophie paddled with all of her effort, her body aching from exertion. With every meter that passed, her husband's body weight appeared to increase. However, she steadfastly resisted giving up since she loved Cooper so much. After what seemed like an eternity, Sophie eventually arrived at the shore where she found her husband's bruised body lying on the ground. She had put her strength to the absolute limit, yet she had managed to bring him with her. Sophie contacted Coast Guards with shaky hands, sobbing uncontrollably as she described the horrific incident. When the Coast Guard arrived, an ambulance was sent to take Cooper's body to the hospital. The medical staff at the facility worked non-stop to save Cooper's life. The great white shark's jaws destroyed his lower body and tore apart his stomach. While everyone knew he was dead, they still administered cardioversion shocks as a last-ditch effort. Their efforts were in vain as Cooper's soul left his body. Sophie was perpetually shocked. After witnessing her husband's body, she began to experience panic attacks, so her doctor referred her for mental care. The memory of that fateful day in September 1988, when Sophie stood on the shores of Delgon Beach, remains etched in her mind with indelible clarity. As she gazed into the endless expanse of the ocean, its vastness seemed to mirror the tumultuous emotions swirling within her. The tranquil beauty of the beach had always been a sanctuary for her, a place of solace and joy. However, on that particular day, it became the backdrop for a life-altering event that would haunt her for years. The incident marked a turning point in Sophie's life, leaving an indescribable void in her heart. She had been blissfully enjoying the day with her partner, savoring the sun's warm embrace and the soothing rhythm of the waves. But fate had other plans as an unforeseen tragedy unfolded before her eyes. The loss of her beloved partner in that brutal twist of fate shattered and scarred Sophie. It was a moment of profound transformation as she grappled with grief and life's harsh realities. After that heart-wrenching day, the once-beloved beach became a place she could no longer bear to visit, a painful reminder of a love lost and a life forever altered. Hanging Beach, California, was known for its serene beauty, the perfect spot for a family day at the shore. On this particular summer day, the sun hung high in the sky, casting shimmering ripples on the cerulean waters. The Turner family, composed of Mark, his wife Sarah, and their 2 children, Emma and Ethan, couldn't have picked a better day to enjoy the waves. An experienced surfer, Mark was excited to share his passion with his family. He had just caught a magnificent wave when the unthinkable happened. A great white shark, its dorsal fin slicing through the water like a knife, surged up from below, its massive jaws clamping down on Mark's surfboard. The impact sent Mark tumbling into the water. Mark's world fell into black as the salty ocean swallowed him. His leg burned with pain, and he could feel the shark's strong jaws ripping through his surfboard just inches away. Despite the panic coursing through him, his survival instincts took over. He struggled to release his leg from the board's debris, while blood stained the water around him. From the shore, Sarah, Emma, and Ethan were terrified to watch their happy day suddenly become a nightmare. The breaking waves drowned out Mark's calls for aid, but his family had witnessed the awful attack and understood they needed to move quickly. While crying, Sarah called the Coast Guard security force. Mark struggled to keep afloat as the minutes passed, his hurt leg stinging. Even though he could no longer see the shark, he knew it was still around. He had to come up with a plan right away. He gathered the last of his strength and assessed the situation. The ocean surrounded him in an infinite circle, with the shoreline seeming like a far-off dot. Mark knew he needed to keep his cool and use less energy. He was getting farther away from the shark's first striking area with each stroke. His thoughts raced as he tried to recall the fundamental survival skills he had previously mastered. The Turner family was in agony on the beach, waiting for the authorities to respond. The dispatcher assured Sarah that help was coming, but each passing second felt like an eternity. Thanks to his sheer willpower, Mark had created a temporary tourniquet out of a piece of his surfboard leash. Although it stopped the blood in his leg, he knew he couldn't continue to float. His attention turned to his family as he kept swimming toward the far shoreline. He had to live to protect them. Time went on, and Mark's strength waned. His limbs felt like lead, and his vision blurred. Desperation clawed at him. Suddenly, the shadow of the great white shark reappeared beneath him. It circled, its dead eyes fixated on him, its presence a chilling reminder of his peril. Mark cried underwater in a frantic guttural scream reverberating through the waves. It was his only weapon against the unrelenting predator, and he hoped his family on the coast would hear. The shark turned away after being briefly spooked. At Hanging Beach, the emergency response team had already arrived, and Sarah, Emma, and Ethan pointed them toward the area where Mark had last been seen. As they observed the rescuers board a boat and set off, they experienced both hope and horror. The shark's circling grew more erratic as Mark continued to swim toward the shore. It seemed increasingly frustrated by its inability to close in for the kill. Mark's vision dimmed, and his limbs ached beyond endurance. Just when he felt he could go on no longer, a powerful engine voice from a rescue boat cut through the air. When the rescuers saw Mark's writhing form, they quickly hauled him aboard. They had arrived on schedule. Mark's family watched in exhilaration as he was carried back to the shore alive despite having a pale face and a broken leg. The great white shark was stopped in its pursuit and vanished into the depths, leaving the Turner family with eerie memories of its disappearance. After being transported to the hospital, Mark underwent surgery and started the protracted road to recovery. The Turner family still bears the mental and physical scars of the ordeal. They had seen firsthand the tremendous force of nature and the grit of a man fighting to survive. The boundary between life and death had been marked in the sand at Hanging Beach, which had formerly stood for tranquility. As Mark lay in his hospital bed, he found solace that he had returned to his family. Their bond had deepened, and they knew they were stronger together despite the horrors they had faced. The great white shark had left its mark, but had not taken their hope or love. September 2009 brought a mild day to the Hepiclo Beach along the Mexican Pacific coast. Valentina Cruz, a 24-year-old surfer passionate about riding the waves, had eagerly anticipated this day. She was joined by her aunt, Maria, and her mother, Isabella, both eager to bask in the sun and sip on margaritas under the warm Mexican sun. Alongside them was Valentina's 23-year-old cousin, Alicia Gomez, who shared her love for surfing. As the women set up their spot on the sun-kissed shore, Valentina and Alicia wasted no time embracing the towering waves of Hepiclo. With surfboards in hand, they paddled out toward the ocean, excitement coursing through their veins. The waves that day were extraordinary, reaching an imposing 4 meters in height, a perfect canvas for the cousins to showcase their skills. Together for years, Valentina and Alicia had been surfing, and this day would go down in history as one of the most exhilarating and unforgettable moments of their lives. The strong waves carried them into the air and rushed them to the ground. They whooped with delight as the wind swept their giggles away as they ascended the peak. A force far more powerful than the seas was about to upend their day's tranquility. Alicia was quickly surrounded by a menacing darkness that appeared out of nowhere with a horrible figure hiding beneath. A predator of the deepest oceans, the great white shark had made its appearance. Alicia's heart pounded with terror as the monstrous jaws erupted from the water. The shark's massive, tooth-filled mouth lunged for her, and she barely had time to react. Valentina, surfing nearby, watched in horror as her cousin was pulled underwater. The shock of the attack sent shockwaves of panic through the cousins. Alicia battled the big white shark's unrelenting jaws underwater for her life. The creature's tremendous fangs tore apart her leg, and the pain pierced her like lightning. She felt herself start to panic. Her screams created a horror environment on the ocean's surface. Valentina's instincts kicked into overdrive as she witnessed the horrifying spectacle unfolding before her. Without a second thought, she propelled herself toward her cousin. Her surfboard held high above her head like a makeshift weapon. The surfboard came crashing down onto the shark's back, causing it to be distracted for some seconds. The distraction briefly diverts the shark's attention, allowing Alicia to escape. She struggled to the surface while gasping for air with all her power. A trembling hand from Valentina was used to help her cousin get on the surfboard. Together, they started the arduous voyage back to land. But destiny had some different plans. Maria and Isabella laughed and talked on the beach when the terror beyond the waves caught their attention. They laughed until they heard Valentina's frantic screams, which made them gasp in horror. Their eyes widened when they witnessed their girls engaged in a great white shark battle. Maria and Isabella took quick action. They rushed for their cell phones and dialed the Coast Guard's emergency hotline, acting out of panic and desperation. They described the frightening event before them, their voices shaking with fright. Although the dispatcher reassured them that aid was on the way, their suffering grew worse as each second passed. The fight to return to the shore continued as Valentina and Alicia battled through the waves. The great white shark continued to circle menacingly while still alive, its lifeless eyes fixed on its prey. As they escaped from its grasp, the shark became furious. After taking Alicia in its mouth, the shark made a great leap and vanished into the ocean's depths. It all happened so quickly that Valentina froze for 2 minutes, and when she realized the situation, she yelled hysterically. Valentina cried non-stop. She found it unbearable that the shark had taken the life of her favorite cousin. Finally, the Coast Guard arrived as a far-off wail of sirens pierced the air. Their boat, operated by professional rescuers, sped toward her while expertly navigating the choppy waves. The searchlights of the rescue crew cut through the darkness. When the Coast Guard discovered Valentina, she was in an unstable condition. Nobody could find Alicia. Their comprehension of what had occurred took a moment. They raised her from the ocean while leaving their surfboards behind as offerings to the sea. Valentina was still breathing, but she was in disbelief. The great white shark disappeared into the depths, serving as a disturbing reminder of how brutally unpredictable aquatic life can be. Maria and Isabella sped back to Valentina when they reached the shore. The shock of losing her daughter left Alicia's mother comatose. They had tears running down their faces from grief. While Valentina was still alive, her loving cousin's lifeless body was submerged. Valentina and Alicia's mother were being escorted to the hospital for their mental health care, as they saw the wild underwater life. They were aware that this day, a day that had begun as a happy adventure, would always serve as a reminder of the loss and grief that had entered their lives. After receiving counseling for several months, Valentina made a sluggish recovery. She chose not to surf anymore. It was a sensible choice because the eerie recollections of Alicia's demise never abandoned her in her dreams. Without her cherished cousin Alicia, she knew she could never go surfing. It was Valentina's way of paying Alicia a small tribute. The Sandbill Beach in Ireland had always been a serene and picturesque haven for families, looking to escape the hustle and bustle of everyday life. On a crisp October morning, the sun bathed the shore in a warm golden glow, promising a perfect day for relaxation. Felix Muller, a 30-year-old surfer, couldn't resist the call of the waves, and he decided it was the ideal day to introduce his favorite sport to his family. With his wife Emma and their 3-year-old daughter Lily, Felix arrived at the beach. They set up beneath a large parasol, the sound of the waves providing a soothing backdrop to their laughter and chatter. As Felix waxed his surfboard and secured his wetsuit, he couldn't help but smile at the idyllic scene unfolding before him. Emma watched Felix with a mixture of pride and concern. She had always admired her husband's love for the ocean, but had never fully embraced his passion for surfing. Today, she let Felix enjoy himself, trusting he would return safely to their little family on the shore. Felix paddled into the glistening waters while Lily played in the surrounding sand. He enjoyed the rush of the ocean and the tempting waves. He had spent much time riding the waves, evident in his every fluid movement and quiet assurance. The Muller family was enjoying the straightforward pleasures of life by the sea, and it was an image of unadulterated bliss. But the calmness vanished in an instant. A great white shark with its dorsal fin slicing through the water like a knife came from the depths like a terrifying shadow. Felix was afraid as the creature pounced at him with open teeth. At that terrifying moment, he became aware of the threat, and his instincts took over. The shark's razor-sharp teeth clamped down on Felix's surfboard, just inches away from his body. The force of the attack sent him tumbling into the water. The world turned into a chaos of bubbles and churning waves as Felix fought to free his leg from the wreckage of his board. Emma and Lily watched in horror on the shore as their tranquil day unraveled. The crashing waves drowned out Emma's screams of terror, but her frantic gestures and wide-eyed desperation conveyed the situation's urgency. Felix knew he was in a fight for his life. Blood clouded the water around him as the shark's teeth ripped through his surfboard and grazed his leg. Pain surged through him, but he couldn't afford to succumb to it. He freed his leg with sheer determination and began swimming away from the shark's initial strike zone. After being briefly stopped, the great white shark circled, keeping its dead eyes fixed on its prey. Felix's thoughts raced, trying to remember every survival skill he had ever learned, while his heart raced as he swam with all the strength he had left. Emma, her eyes wet with tears, knew she had to act. She grabbed Lily's hand and ran toward the Coast Guard security room, just a short distance from the beach. Panic and dread fueled her as she reached the room and dialed 911. Emma's voice quivered in terror as she described the horrific event at Sandbill Beach. The dispatcher reassured her that assistance was approaching, but the following seconds seemed to drag on forever. Felix was still fighting for his life at the time. He created a temporary tourniquet from a piece of his surfboard leash to stop the bleeding from his leg. An unending expanse of water surrounded him, and the far coast appeared out of reach. The minutes turned into hours, and Felix's strength waned. His limbs felt like lead and his vision blurred. Desperation clawed at him. Suddenly, the shadow of the great white shark reappeared beneath him. It circled, its menacing presence a chilling reminder of his peril. In a last-ditch effort, Felix screamed underwater, a guttural, desperate cry that vibrated through the waves. He hoped his family on the shore would hear. It was his only defense against the relentless predator. The shark, momentarily startled, veered away. The emergency response team had arrived at Sandbill Beach, guided by Emma's frantic directions. They launched a boat and sped toward the scene, their searchlights cutting through the darkening water. Felix kept swimming toward the far shoreline as his power quickly diminished. The shark's circling became increasingly irregular because it could not approach its prey for the kill. When Felix thought he could no longer continue, the rescue boat appeared, and powerful hands lifted him from the water. His body was battered, his leg mangled, but he was alive. After being stopped in its pursuit, the great white shark vanished into the depths, leaving the Mueller family with a terrifying experience that would follow them for years. As Felix lay in the rescue boat, gasping for breath and gripping his makeshift tourniquet, he knew he had been given a second chance at life. The jaws of a predator had tested the bond between him and his family, and it had emerged stronger than ever. Emma hugged Lily closely as they returned to the shore, her eyes welling with tears. She had never experienced such terror before, and she was aware that the trauma of that day would last. She cast a loving, grateful glance at Felix's way as she made a quiet pledge to herself and their daughter. Felix would never again go surfing. He would no longer let the lure of the waters entice him because his family had already suffered enough. They had been given a horrifying glimpse of the erratic harshness of nature, and they didn't want to take that chance again. As the rescue boat sped back to the safety of the shore, the setting sun cast a crimson hue on the horizon. It was a reminder that even in the face of danger, there was beauty to be found. And for the Mueller family, the beauty they cherished most was the precious gift of life itself.